You have got to be kidding me. PA and NP schools aren't considered professional programs anymore, but chiropractic and theology are? What is happening in our country? Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle with the Medicine Couch. And if you're wondering what in the world I'm talking about, if you've had your head under a rock in the professional world, I'm referring to the recent ruling by the Department of Education that's about to hit PA and NP students and, quite frankly, our entire professions right between the eyes. So let's dive in and discuss this a little bit. So what's happening is starting July 1st, 2026, graduate programs will now fall into two buckets. Bucket one will be professional degree programs. And these programs will have access to up to $50,000 per year in federal student loans with a $200,000 cap. Now, this list includes MDs and DOs, dentists, veterinarians, optometrists, podiatrists, chiropractors, lawyers, pharmacists, and even theology and divinity degrees. And before we move on to the other bucket, I have to say those student loan caps are not the greatest either for those programs, but they're better than bucket two. So bucket two is all other graduate programs. And people in those programs will only get access to $20,500 per year in federal student loans with a $100,000 cap. Now, these figures don't include your undergrad loans. And in this bucket is where you will find the non-professional degree programs like PA and NP, along with PT, nursing, public health, audiology, and other health professions. Now, this is a real problem for all of these professions, but here's why I think it's especially difficult for PAs. PA school often costs between roughly $45,000 to $75,000 per year just in tuition. And under this new rule, federal loans will now cover less than half of that. And that doesn't even begin to address room and board and basic living expenses. Now, other programs, of course, have high tuition, but PA school is normally more expensive of all these other programs. It is also an intense, full-time, 24 to 27-month program where students are specifically told that they cannot work. PA school is so intense. You are, in school all day long, have labs and everything, and then you have to study every night and all on the weekends. So impossible to work, really. Unlike nurse practitioners, where a lot of their programs are online, and most of them work full-time as nurses while they're going to PA school. So after July 1st, 2026, if you want to be a PA and you're not financially independent or have massive savings, you will be forced to take private loans, some high-interest private loans, or just not become a PA at all. That is rough, and it is not great news for the profession. Now let's talk about the likely consequences of this new funding gap. First, as I talked about, fewer people will even pursue the profession or any of these professions. Many simply just won't be able to finance it. Now, we already have a shortage of healthcare workers across this country, and so this may compound the problem and keep many people from working in healthcare. The second problem is that this gap will reduce diversity, which we already have an appalling lack of diversity. And I'm not just talking about race. I'm also talking about socioeconomic diversity. So this ruling is going to cut out many working class and disadvantaged students who will likely not be able to even qualify for private loans. So they won't be able to go at all. And many people have pointed out that most of the professions that are now labeled as professional are male-dominated fields, while the other healthcare professions are significantly female-oriented. And another issue is that many students who actually do get to enroll will be under some significant financial strain and stress, which will affect their mental health, academic performance, and even cause some people not to be able to complete their programs. These are some very real and tangible consequences that will come from this decision. Now, I've seen a lot of visceral reactions online, and trust me, I've had them too. It is appalling and insulting to hear that your profession, the training for your profession, isn't considered a professional program when you have spent so much time studying, go through a very intense program, and it costs so much and not be ruled professional. I get that. But I feel that this ruling is really a business decision that is focused on trying to reduce federal student loans, not necessarily a commentary really on the professions themselves. And that there are some nuances here that we need to think about. PA tuition has risen 3 to 7% every single year for more than a decade. And I'm sure that other graduate programs have also seen similar increases. And I have to think that one of the biggest reasons that universities could continue to raise these prices so high is because students could always borrow more from the federal government. There really wasn't that pressure to slow tuition inflation. So part of me wonders, will this change force schools to reassess pricing? Will it push them to freeze tuition or at least slow the increase rate? Will it make them create more scholarships? It's terrible that new students are facing this and they're the ones that are going to face the most of the consequences from this. But long term, I do suppose this could push tuition back towards reality, which would be a good thing and I think is a needed thing. But that outcome is not guaranteed. And like I said, it penalizes the students instead of addressing the bigger issue directly with these businesses or universities. Now let's flip the perspective a little bit and talk about how this is going to affect the programs themselves. Public universities are nonprofits, but many of them have large cash reserves and multiple revenue streams. Now, they do often reinvest their money back into the university and potentially could have more financial flexibility. They may not like it, but they likely can freeze the tuitions like I talked about. They can offer scholarships, and they are more likely to be able to absorb these financial shocks. Now, private universities, on the other hand, they're kind of all over the map. Some are very financially strong, but others rely heavily on tuition. So big public schools are likely to be a safer bet moving forward for the most part, and students should be cautious with tuition-dependent private programs. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. Now, what do I think that the PA and NP programs are likely to do next? Like, what can we expect? I would think that given these new loan caps, that they're going to have to do something to adjust tuition, to, like I said, freeze it. It would be nice if they even rolled it back some, but I wouldn't count on that. They're also likely going to introduce a lot more scholarships, institutional scholarships. And I think that those scholarships are going to be more focused on in-state applicants, and they are going to move away from out-of-state scholarships. Now, private programs, they're probably going to have to really tighten their budgets up. I can see them increasing class sizes, dramatically while they reduce the faculty and cut other resources. And yes, I'm afraid some programs may not survive this. But we all need to remember that this ruling is not set in stone. PA, NP, PT, nursing, and all other health professions could still be reclassified as professional degree programs, but only if people really speak out and advocate for that. So if you disagree with this ruling and disagree with what's happening, here's how you can advocate for reclassification. Contact your federal legislators. Tell them how you feel that this reduces access to PA and NP education, limits diversity, worsens the healthcare workforce shortage, and misclassifies these programs, which absolutely are professional programs. Also, I think that's another reason why it's important to support your national organizations. AAPA and AANP, among others, have already come out releasing statements opposing this ruling. And it's important to support them and be part of the organizations because they're the ones who are meeting with policymakers. And of course, you can't forget, we always have to give money to political action committees. I can't believe that I have to say this, and this is how our government works, but money talks. And the only way to move our profession forward and to fight for our rights is to fund political action committees that will do the lobbying for us. Now, let's talk practically about how this affects PA and NP students currently and pre-PA and pre-NP students and what they need to do. So first of all, if you're a current PA student, I'm sure many of them are like, oh my God, what if I'm already in PA school? How will this affect me? Well, if you're enrolled before July 1st of 2026 and you've already taken out federal loans for your program, then you will almost certainly be grandfathered in under the old borrowing rules, which means you should be able to continue borrowing with the higher graduate loan limits, usually for the rest of your program. Now, please note, I am not giving you financial advice. I'm only telling you what I have seen and what I believe to be true. So please visit with the financial aid office of your school to find out the particulars for sure. So this ruling obviously is going to overwhelmingly affect upcoming students, those who will be starting PA or NP school in the second half of 2026 or later. If that is you and you are going to need financial assistance, you may need to prioritize applying to financially strong universities, probably especially these large public in-state universities that may have more scholarship money available. You're going to have to start asking tough questions in the interview, like how has your program adapted or adjusted to this new federal loan caps? What scholarships are now going to become available? What percentage of students will need private loans? And what steps has your university taken to keep PA education affordable? And everyone, no matter what school you go to, needs to be cautious about the financial viability of the program that you're going to, especially if it's a private tuition-dependent program. It would be prudent to check into the programs that you want to go to make sure they aren't in danger of folding for lack of funding. And finally, prepare yourself financially. Again, this is hard and no one wants to hear this, but I do think it is another consequence that could be a good thing in the long run. This means that you may need to work more during undergrad, which honestly, if you're not working now, you should be, because that will help you prepare for the rigor of PA school. But anyway, if you work more during undergrad or even take a gap year after graduation to work up and save money, can really put you in a much better position, not only financially, but that gap year can make you a stronger applicant and give you a more solid knowledge foundation before you begin your PA or NP programs. So, am I frustrated with all this and frankly pissed off? Yes, of course. I think this classification is a slap in the face. I think it is unfair to the professions that are integral to our healthcare system. But I'm not an expert. Yeah, I think it's the wrong move, and I think it puts an undue strain on students and the health professions. But I'm also trying to stay measured enough to see that there could be some long-term potential positives of this if tuition finally comes back down to reality and if students are graduating with less student debt on their shoulders. Now, if you're somebody who's already practicing and paying on those crushing student loans, you need to know that there are some changes for existing student loans also in the new Big Beautiful Bill. And you should also know that many clinicians are paying thousands of dollars more than they need to because they don't understand the different repayment rules, the different programs, and the nuances that come with them. Now, if that's you, be sure to check out my next video. I'll put it here when it's ready, about student loans. I'm interviewing some financial advisors that are going to talk about strategies that can significantly and dramatically affect your financial picture. Trust me, you're going to want to see it. That's it for now. Take care, stay sane, and I'll see you next time on the Medicine Couch. Bye.